On the morning of 26 April 2019, at approximately 11:17 a.m., outside the showroom of the Harley-Davidson dealership on Empt Wellington Highway, a man later identified as Josh Masters exited the building after paying for his motorcycle repairs. Security camera footage at the dealership, time-stamped 11/17/02, shows Masters, wearing a bright white gang patch of Killer Beez, mounting his motorcycle and driving off. Less than 2 minutes later, an inbound vehicle, a black Toyota hatchback, appears on the same camera. Moments after that, a 9mm pistol is fired. Police records mark 11/19/24 as the time of a 911 call reporting a shooting. What began as a routine visit to a repair shop became the starting point for a major investigation, a day that would mark the last unrestrained freedom of a gang leader, and the first documented step toward unraveling a violent episode. What followed would only become clear through painstaking evidence gathering, forensic analysis, and court proceedings. Hook on 26th, April 2019, at 11:17:02 a.m., outside the Harley-Davidson dealership in Mount Wellington, Auckland, a man known as Josh Masters climbed on his motorcycle and drove away. Security footage captured his departure. 2 minutes later, a black Toyota hatchback arrived. At 11:19:24, a 911 call log records a witness reporting gunshots. By 11:21, first responders found Masters collapsed beside his motorcycle, a 9mm shell casing nearby, and the smell of spent gunpowder in the air. The paramedics' report shows a bullet entered his left arm, exited into his side, and lodged in his spinal column. Masters was immediately immobilized and transported to hospital. What had appeared as a routine afternoon at a dealership turned into a life-altering shooting. In those first chaotic minutes, investigators would not yet know motive, but a methodical reconstruction had begun, one that would rely entirely on forensic detail, surveillance logs, and institutional records. Hook, 150 words. ACT Watre, the situation. On the morning of 26 April 2019, at 09:45 a.m., Josh Masters arrived at his MT Wellington residence, a modest rental unit in suburban East Auckland. According to a police-verified timeline compiled from cell phone metadata and rental property records, he spent the next hour preparing for a scheduled motorcycle service, checking tires, gathering a riding jacket, and donning his familiar white patch. A neighbor later told investigators that around 10:05 a.m., they heard the engine of his motorcycle idle outside the unit, then fade away. No unusual behavior, no sign of agitation, simply a man following his routine. Later, around 10:52 a.m., footage from a petrol station CCTV shows him stopping briefly to fuel the bike. The timestamp, 10:52:47, matched his phone's last GPS ping at that location. The motorcycle's license plate was recorded, confirming identity. In that moment, nothing suggested what was to come. On paper, the day began as any other. Routine activity, mundane errands. The motorcycle, the petrol stop, the clothing, all ordinary. But the white gang patch he wore would later become a critical visual identifier in investigation. Chapter 1. 178 words. At 11:02 a.m., police records show Masters signed in at the front desk of the Harley-Davidson dealership. The service log lists a repair for faulty rear suspension. A technician later recounted putting the bike on the lift at 11:05 and marking the job minor service. Nothing in the service order raised suspicion. Springs tested, brakes checked, oil level verified. Masters waited in the customer lounge. CCTV footage from the waiting area, time-stamped 11:07:23, shows him seated, checking his phone, his demeanor calm. No raised voices, no hesitation. At 11:12:16, a technician called over. "All done, you're good to go." Masters nodded, retrieved his jacket, and left the customer area. The service receipt confirms payment processed at 11:13:05. The transaction was routine and unremarkable. A standard repair, standard procedure, no warning signs. But the exit from the building would soon be captured on exterior surveillance, the last time Masters would appear in control of his own mobility. Chapter 2. 164 words. In past years, Masters had served a 10-year, 5-month sentence for methamphetamine supply and money laundering, a conviction based on thousands of intercepted phone calls during Operation Leo. He was released from prison in July 2018 and had resumed activities with the Killer Beez. At the time of the shooting, the gang environment in Auckland was tense, rivalries unfolding, and prior incidents had seeded suspicion among both law enforcement and gang affiliates. The dealership itself sat at a busy intersection, visible from multiple angles, surrounded by commercial businesses with their own security systems. Traffic flowed steadily along Mount Wellington Highway throughout the morning. Weather records for 26th April show clear skies, temperature at 17 degrees Celsius, no precipitation. Visibility was excellent. The location offered no cover, no seclusion, an unusual choice for a violent confrontation. Investigators would later note this detail. Whoever approached Masters did so openly, in broad daylight, with little regard for witnesses. Chapter 3. 160 words. Act 2. The investigation begins at 11:21 a.m. Paramedics from Auckland Emergency Services arrived on scene, followed by officers from the local district police within minutes. The police report notes the location: the dealership's northeast parking area, beside a motorcycle ramp. The environment, clear daylight, no precipitation, minimal foot traffic, was documented. Officers found Masters lying supine, motorcycle on its side. A single 9mm shell casing rested approximately 1.2 meters from the bike, near a skid mark on the asphalt. Paramedics' report recorded a single entry wound on his left arm and no exit wound. A bullet had lodged in the spinal canal, as later confirmed by hospital x-rays. No weapon was found at the immediate scene. Detective Sergeant Tofilau Fa'a Va'ailua, first on site, ordered the dealership sealed, CCTV drives secured, and all potential witnesses, customers, staff, bystanders, identified. The physical scene bore no sign of a struggle, no overturned vehicles, no defensive wounds, suggesting a targeted shooting rather than chaotic violence. Investigators began to ask, who recognized Masters, and why was he targeted so openly? Chapter 4. 187 words. Within 2 hours, by 1:30 p.m., detectives had secured exterior surveillance footage from the dealership and surrounding businesses. The video shows the black Toyota hatchback arriving at 11:19:02, coming to a brief stop approximately 12 meters from where Masters had parked, before two individuals exit. One enters a doorway of the dealership complex. The other walks directly toward the parked motorcycle. The footage ends just as the first gunshot is heard. Multiple staff and bystander interviews were conducted between 12:45 and 3:15 p.m. A staffer recalled seeing a dark-colored hatchback, small, maybe older model, parked nearby for only a minute. A customer waiting in the lounge later told police, "I glanced out the window. I saw a man yelling something, then saw someone fall." That customer's 911 call formed part of the official log. Detective Fa'a Va'ailua summarized in his report, "No attempt at robbery, personal items left untouched." The video and eyewitness reports pointed toward a premeditated attack, arrival, exit, targeted movement, rather than a crime of opportunity. The focus shifted from what happened to who ordered and carried out the shooting. Chapter 5. 208 words. By 28 April 2019, 2 days after the incident, ballistic analysis on the 9mm shell casing determined it was fired from a semi-automatic pistol of make and model consistent with gang-associated weapons in prior cases. The firing pin impression and cartridge mark matched no national reference database, but investigators flagged the signature as consistent with previously recorded weapons in gang-related files. At the same time, forensic teams lifted latent fingerprints from the shell casing. Though smudged, they catalogued ridge patterns awaiting comparison. The motorcycle itself was dusted. No prints matching masters or dealership staff were found. A note in the forensic summary reads, "Latent print sample, 19 Horn Deodol 4, 2019, C1. Insufficient for definitive match. Comparison pending. Standard ballistic analysis requires microscopic examination of firing pin marks, breech face impressions, and ejector marks, unique signatures left on every cartridge. In this case, the casing showed clear rifling characteristics, but no match to weapons previously recovered in Auckland. The ballistics confirmed use of a gang-style weapon, but the forensic leads, shell casing prints, remained inconclusive. Investigators moved to digital and circumstantial data, phone records, vehicle registration databases, known associates. Chapter 6. 204 words. Investigators obtained call detail records, CDR, for all mobile numbers linked to masters and known associates. Analysis revealed that at 11:18:55, roughly 7 seconds before the video shows the hatchback arriving, a call was placed from a handset registered to someone previously under surveillance for gang activity. The call lasted only 4 seconds. The phone's last tower ping, before silence, was a cell tower near a residential block in East Auckland. Cross-referencing the vehicle registration database identified a black Toyota hatchback, older model, registered to a shell company linked with a known associate of tribesman motorcycle gang. That same vehicle had been spotted on prior surveillance near known tribesman meeting places. Cell tower data can pinpoint location within hundreds of meters. In this case, the tower ping narrowed the search area to a 3-block radius in Otahuhu. Detective Fa Vailua's file notes. Pattern consistent with prior movement of tribesman-linked vehicles. Warrants vehicle intercept. The digital trail elevated suspicion. The vehicle's ownership and phone call timing aligned with known gang networks. A warrant was prepared to search the vehicle and connect phone data to physical evidence. Chapter 7. 195 words. On 30th April 2019 at 06:15 a.m., officers executed a search warrant at the residence listed for the Toyota hatchback. The registered address was a suburban rental flat in Otahuhu, East Auckland. Police found the hatchback parked outside. Inside the car, beneath a passenger seat, they recovered a 9mm pistol with spent shell casings matching the one from the scene, along with a loaded magazine and a second magazine. Serial number had been filed off, but forensic experts later concluded the weapon's rifling matched the casing. At the same time, investigators seized 2 mobile phones, clothing consistent with what the shooter wore, a dark hoodie, dark jeans, and digital storage devices. In a signed inventory report, Detective Fa Va'elua indicated potential homicide instrument, digital evidence, clothes. No one was present in the flat. No arrests were made that day. Physical evidence linked the weapon to the vehicle and to a residence associated with a known gang, strengthening the case for premeditated shooting. Now the task shifted to linking the material evidence with a suspect identity. Chapter 8. 189 words. Act 3. The evidence accumulates. Ballistics experts completed microscopic comparison by August May 2019. The rifling impressions from the recovered pistol matched the shell casing from the dealership scene. Standard forensic procedure, establishing the weapon as the one used in the shooting. Rifling analysis examines the unique grooves cut into a bullet as it travels through a gun barrel. Each weapon leaves a distinct pattern. Simultaneously, forensic examiners attempted to lift fingerprints from the pistol, magazines, and upholstery. On 9th May, one latent print from the passenger seat upholstery was preliminarily matched to a known gang affiliate using National Criminal Fingerprint Database. Evidence chain established: the vehicle, the weapon, the gang network. Yet the print alone was not sufficient for an arrest. Investigators needed either eyewitness identification or additional forensic link to the shooter. While forensic teams worked in the lab, investigators 40 miles away were reviewing digital records from the previous week, searching for movement patterns that might place a suspect at the scene. Forensic linkage completed the what, the gun, the car, the gang, but not yet the who. Investigators readied to bring witnesses forward and prepared to pursue cooperation from informants. Chapter 9, 213 words. Between 12 and 14th, May 2019, detectives conducted 17 recorded interviews, dealership staff, bystanders, prior associates of both gangs. One early informant, a low-ranking gang associate, agreed to speak under anonymity. In notes, he told investigators he was angry at Masters for sticking his nose in business. But the informant declined to give a name or attend court. Two dealership staffers independently recalled seeing the black hatchback earlier in the day, one as early as 10:45 a.m., but they could not definitively tie the car to individuals. Another witness, a delivery driver, said he heard a quarrel outside, but assumed it was a motorcycle owner complaining. Detective files mark these leads as non-identifying hearsay. In gang-related cases, witness cooperation often deteriorates over time. Fear of retaliation, community pressure, or simple reluctance to engage with the justice system. Investigators documented each statement carefully, knowing that even vague recollections might corroborate physical evidence. Eyewitness testimony added context, gang resentment, prior presence of the vehicle, but lacked the specificity required to charge a named suspect. The case remained evidence-rich, but identity of the shooter remained unconfirmed. Chapter 10, 197 words. On 3rd of June 2019, based on the ballistics match, vehicle ownership, fingerprint evidence, and intelligence linking the vehicle to a gang associate, the Crown prosecutor filed formal charges against Okusitino Tai, a known member of the tribesmen, for wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. The indictment cited the firearm, the car, and warrant-seized items. In court documents, Tai's name is linked to the rental flat in Otahuhu and the black hatchback. The charging sheet references the spent 9mm casing, the matching weapon, and the fingerprint match as primary evidence. Prosecutors moved forward relying primarily on physical and forensic evidence rather than eyewitness testimony, standard procedure in gang-related shooting cases where witnesses often recant. Trial preparations began, and press attention turned to the gang conflict underlying the case. Chapter 11, 144 words. Act of War. The resolution. During the trial before the High Court, held beginning 10th of May 2020, forensic ballistics specialists testified to the match between casing and weapon. One expert explained, "The probability of a random match in rifling characteristics is 1 in several million. The jury heard that the vehicle was traced to Tai's address and that his fingerprints were found on the upholstery. However, as often in gang cases, eyewitnesses refused to testify or provided vague alibis. The anonymous informant did not come forward, and no direct visual ID of the shooter was made. Defense argued the evidence was circumstantial and insufficient to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Tai pulled the trigger. The prosecution's case rested heavily on forensic and circumstantial evidence, consistent with gang-related prosecutions where direct witness testimony is rare. The verdict would hinge on whether the jury accepted the chain of evidence as definitive. Chapter 12. 155 words. On 26 May 2020, the jury returned a guilty verdict, finding Okusitino Tai guilty of wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. At sentencing, the presiding judge imposed a 7-year prison sentence, citing the premeditated nature of the act and its public safety implications, given it occurred in a public dealership during business hours. In media statements, Detective Fa'a Vae Lua said, "This was an extremely violent incident which occurred in public and in broad daylight. Masters, severely injured and paralyzed, survived, but would require ongoing care." The court noted the lasting damage to his spinal cord. Public records show his mobility was permanently impaired. Despite the conviction, certain aspects remained murky. The prosecution never established a publicly verified motive, no direct admission, no consensual statement from Tay explaining the reason for targeting Masters. Gang intelligence reports referenced tensions between the Killer Beez and the tribesmen following Masters' 2018 release from prison, but no official documentation linked those tensions directly to the shooting. Moreover, the fingerprint found on the upholstery belonged to a lower-ranking affiliate, not Tai directly, raising questions about whether another gang member had handled the car or planted evidence. The defense raised this in appeals, but appellate courts upheld the original verdict based on the totality of evidence. Court documents note the significant convergence of forensic, circumstantial, and intelligence evidence. Institutionally, the case triggered increased surveillance on gang-linked vehicle registrations, and policing units expanded protocols for gang-related firearm threats, a legacy of the case's procedural steps. The record shows resolution, a guilty verdict, sentencing, but also acknowledges gaps: no motive in the public record, no definitive eyewitness, some uncertainty about direct handling of the car by the shooter. The investigation ended with a conviction, but some shadows remained in the institutional file. Chapter 13, 305 words. Final echo. In the archived court transcript, the judge noted, "The weapon, the vehicle's history, and the forensic linkage together form a chain sufficient to conclude beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant fired the shot. That chain begins and ends, in court documents, with a single shell casing found on an Auckland parking lot at 11:19:24 a.m., 26 April 2019. That casing now rests in evidence, an unremarkable aluminum fragment, but it marks the hinge where routine motorcycle maintenance turned into a criminal case, where everyday normalcy intersects with violence, and where institutional response transformed a moment of danger into a matter of public record.